You're listening to iCommunicate with your host, Mark Altman, on Full Service Radio, AM 830 WCRN. Once again, here's Mark.
Okay, welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm with my guest, James Donaldson. And James, I want to pick up where we left off, and I want to talk about when you reached that crisis point and the unfortunate situation happened at Washington State with that young man. I want to ask you, were there times prior to 2017, did you have an understanding what mental health issues even were? And were there steps that you've looked back on that you wish you would have taken before it had actually reached that crisis point?
Yeah, good question. You know, I think one of the things that came about with me going through what I went through was a much, much greater sense of empathy and a capacity for empathy than ever before. I never really have been around mental health illness throughout my growing up years, and you know, I've always had a few crazy teammates here and there, but I never considered them mentally ill, and never really saw any of that in my family that I know of. So I really didn't quite understand when people talked about depression. Girlfriends and relationships over the years, when the girlfriend would try to share her thoughts with me about what she was going through, her feelings, her emotions, I never really was able to be that empathetic and really understand. But now I am. I mean, this really did a 180 for me and put me on a pathway to understanding and being open to listening and talking to everybody and anybody who's gone through anything, because it's real. Even if it's not real to me, it's real to them. And we all deserve the opportunity to have somebody in our lives that we could sit down and we can just be real with and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this, or, you know, this bothers me and I need somebody to understand that. So that's where I am now. And that's the big change that came about with me over the last year or so. This is similar to, I had open heart surgery back about 3.5 years ago.
Wow.
Unexpectedly. I had a aortic dissection that was developing rapidly and almost burst on me. This would have been 98, 99% fatal if it did burst. And the doctors caught it just in time. I underwent a emergency 12-hour open heart surgery. I've got the full length zipper on my rib cage to prove it. And I stayed in the intensive care unit for 2.5 months, and I woke up 2 weeks later after surgery. They put me in a medically induced coma so I could recover, hopefully. When I went through all of that, that is when I really said, wow, life is precious. I've always enjoyed life. I've always cherished life and my friends and relationships. But this put it up a whole new level, 10-fold, 100-fold more of how important my friends were to me, my relationships, my loved ones. I went around the next couple of years telling everybody I met, hey, I love you, and, you're important to me. And I just really cherish life at that point and still do. And then this latest bout of depression and anxiety really brought the empathetic part into what others are going through and what I'm going through as well.
So James, I want to ask you a two-part question, so I'll just start with the beginning. So I want you to rewind back to your playing days for a moment and picture yourself in the Mavericks locker room. And you're sitting there possibly feeling depressed, possibly feeling anxious. You or another teammate. Can you imagine? So part one of the question is, can you imagine going to Coach Mata and actually sharing that and professing that, part one? And part two, one of the biggest challenges, I think, for athletes or anybody else for that matter, is how do you know the difference between what is disappointment, lower level depression, or maybe the kind of depression or anxiety that could lead to some pretty significant mental health issues?
That's a really good question. First of all, I don't think I would have, Dick Mata and I are dear friends now, 30 years later. But then he was such a stern taskmaster and a disciplinarian, a father figure that I probably would not dare to have opened up to him and talked to him about anything personal. Now, this is what assistant coaches are for. Assistant coaches are in that in-between bridge that you usually feel a little more comfortable with, a little more confiding in. I had a wonderful assistant coach, big man coach, Clifford Ray.
Yep.
Clifford was, yeah. You remember Clifford?
I do.
The Golden State Warriors,
Yep.
1975.
Very
world
much.
Champion.
Mm-hmm.
Clifford was my big man coach with me and Roy Tarpley and Bill Winnington and Uwe Blob and all these guys. And Clifford became a dear, dear friend. He was my confidant. I could talk to him about anything because he had been there, he had done that. And he knew the pressures of playing in the NBA, the lifestyles that we were leading and having to stay on top of. So I most likely would not have gone to my head coach. And this is what I'm encouraging all of our young athletes and student athletes to do. If you don't feel comfortable going to your head coach, make sure you find an assistant coach or someone who's instrumental in the team and on the team that you can sit down and confide in. And then that will work its way up the chain eventually to the people who can really help you. But it's important to talk. And us competitive athletes, we tend to tuck all of that inside of us, just grunt through it, and keep on pushing. But it's so detrimental to overall what we need to do. The second part of your question was, I'm sorry, Mark.
Yeah, no problem. The second part of the question was, what's the internal checklist? How does an athlete or anybody else for that matter, if they're going to ask themselves 2 or 3 questions to say, wait, is this just standard normal emotion that everybody feels, or wait, have I gone a level above that? What are the questions they should be asking themselves?
Well, I think when you find these issues, these burdens being carried onto the practice court, being carried into the game, you're still thinking about them, you're still weighed down by them. I mean, all of us have family issues going on, family dynamics, sending money to people to help them with their bills, their support, whatever. You can't get away from it. The only safe sanctuary is actually in the practice court or in the game. But if you find yourself carrying that over into a practice court or to the game, these issues have become larger than what you probably can handle. And that's what the players need to really be on guard for. It's okay to think about it between games, between practice, but, we train ourselves to block everything out. We're in this vacuum of professional sports, collegiate sports, for those couple of hours in practice every day. Nothing else can touch us. Nothing else can bother us because we're focused on practice. The same with the games. But if you can't focus on practice, you can't focus on the game, you've got an issue, and you really need to reach out and get some help for that.
Yeah, and James, my daughter, Kyra, who taught me an expression about almost like an assessment, and she said if your feelings or emotions affect your ability to live, laugh, or love, that's kind of a message to know you might have an issue, and I thought that was pretty meaningful.
I like that. Wow, that's great. No, she's a wonderful gal, and that's a wonderful step. I'm going to steal that from her. And use it myself.
That's great. That's great. So, James, one of the areas you're very passionate about that connected with me or resonated with me as well, is men and boys being able to express their emotions. And I have a parenting workshop I do for companies and individuals. It's called Mixed Emotions, and how men and boys express their feelings. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit. And for you personally, what are you seeing? I think there's obvious things in terms of the stigma and how men and women are raised and the different expectations and so on and so forth. But it's to me, again, the mental health issue, if you're internalizing things and if you don't have that support system, just talk about the consequences and how you're trying to help in that area.
Yeah, that really is my primary focus, is working with young men and boys and men in general, that we all need to be able to put our guard down, find somebody we can confide in, and talk to them on a level that's below the surface. We're all good at the surfacey stuff, a little, hey, what's up kind of thing. But we need to get below that and just pull somebody aside and really reach out and connect with them. This is one of the detriments of living in this technological age that we're living in. All the kids have cell phones. They all have iPads and PCs and everything else. And they are much more comfortable with their technology in the palm of their hand than they are sitting across the table making a deep and personal, meaningful relationship with someone. And it's unfortunate because, I remember as a boy growing up, riding my little bicycle with my other friends, the guys in the neighborhood, and we'd go down to, a creek bed and sit up there on the bank and just look up into the sky and see the clouds form and dream about what we wanted to be, dream about, what life is going to be like. I don't think kids get a chance to do that much anymore.
Nope.
And it's going to be extremely difficult when it's time to start forming deep and personal, meaningful relationships with a life partner. Can you imagine? I mean, they have to sit down with a girl, or a girl has to sit down with a boy, and they have to put down their text messaging and their cell phones and just say, "Hey, let me talk and try to connect."
Yep.
I don't know how they're going to do that. So that's the big challenge out there, and that's really where my emphasis is especially with the boys, to say, "Hey, guys, you've got to, don't be so tough." I went to a school last week and spoke to a group of at-risk kids, and they were all African-American boys. And they had some of the toughest looks on their faces, some of the crossed arms, staring me down kind of looks. And I'm just like, "Hey, guys, you've got to be able to open up and relax. I mean, in this environment with me, you can definitely relax. Out there in the hallway, you might be tough again, but you've got to be able to reach out and help each other."
Dale, so we're going to go to commercial, and we're going to continue when we come back after the break with James Donaldson, and we're going to talk about the decision to advocate for yourself. I'm Mark Altman. We'll be right back.